So, guys, the next book is a little bit different, a little bit of different tone. It's a book called Before I Go to Sleep, written by S.J. Watson. Lots of initials here. And this is his first book he's ever written. He wrote it in between his shifts. It's a guy.
Is it a guy? Is it?
Yeah, it's a guy, yeah. And he's writing about a woman, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And he worked in the NHS and he wrote it in his breaks.
Wow. Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's very talented. Like first book, it went into the New York bestseller and Sunday bestseller list. So he's done very, very well. And the theme is around amnesia, isn't it? Nicola, do you want to explain a little bit more about it?
It's basically like 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and
very much.
but a lot more serious.
Yeah.
So it starts off with a woman. She's waking up and she's in the bed with a random man, and she's like, oh my god, it's like one night stand, and she thinks of herself as quite like mid-20s, late 20s. She goes to the bathroom, she looks in the mirror, and it's just late 40s woman looking at her, and basically you realise that she lost her memory when she was in her 20s, and every day she wakes up not knowing who she is. And her husband then tells her life story, so he is everything to her. She trusts him, and but eventually she starts seeing this doctor to try and improve her memory, and he tells her to start writing a journal, but what she writes in her journal doesn't match up with what her husband tells her every morning. So then, she starts to realise that something's not quite right, and you kind of just go on a journey with her to find out the truth.
Yeah, it's such an interesting theme, actually. I mean, Disha, what would you do if you woke up every day?
Well, I've woken up today in the same state.
Did you find a man next to you you didn't recognise?
No, strange man.
No man next to me.
Russell Brand
Christian
there?
Grey, no. I think it is quite scary, because every day she wakes up and is like, where am I? But I think what's clever about the book is as it goes on, she slowly starts to remember things.
It helps her writing this journal.
By writing, But yeah, I love that book because I just wanted to know what happened at the end. So I had to read. It was one of those books where you read it and you're like, no, I'm not going to stop until I find out.
I literally read it all in one night.
You did, really?
I literally read it all in one night.
It was so good, though, wasn't it?
I read really quickly, but still it was like an entire night where, people would try and talk to me and I'd be like, yeah, in a minute. And then like 50 pages later, I'd be like, they must have forgotten by now, it's fine.
It's just you start to wonder, you feel like her, you feel as lost as her. The way he writes it, you just feel so like, you feel how she feels, like, I don't know who I am. I see a 47-year-old woman here, but I remember myself being 27. Like, my memory is from when I was youthful, I had young skin, and here I see this 47-year-old woman. I don't understand, what's happened, and then this huge gap, and then she starts to find out that through this journal that she had a son, but the weird thing is that her husband tells her she hasn't got a son, and so things start to not add up, and it gets very,
you can't trust anyone, because she can't trust anyone. You're like constantly questioning what people are saying to her. Even the doctor who you know that you should trust him, but you're just like, what is going on?
But you don't know who. I mean, like you say you should trust him, but you don't know who. You should trust your husband. You should trust your doctor. Exactly. They're telling you different things.
Who do you trust? This is the whole point of this book.
Can
she trust them?
You can only trust yourself. That is the
and that's why.
And there's no like you to trust. It's an interesting premise and an interesting book.
And the journal, which is the key thing in this, because obviously the book is based around her writing this journal, and she rereads it every single. She has to keep reading it. It's like her best friend. It's her confidant. She's her own confidant. She has to fill herself in every day to know who she is.
But
it's very interesting.
She hides the journal in a certain place, and then as sometimes she wakes up the next day and knows, automatically I need to go here.
Yeah.
So that
the doctor helps her. She has this doctor who reminds her get the journal.
He reminds her, but then sometimes there's one bit where he doesn't remind her, and she's read the journal, and he goes, "I didn't phone you today to remind you." So
her
she just begins to
start getting it back.
It's interesting how it just builds and builds, and every lie starts to become, and she's trying to work out, how do I find out what the truth is? And she does start to uncover it, and the end is just amazing.
Can I ask, did anyone
We're
guess?
not going to mention the ending,
anyone
but
guess what the ending was?
No.
I didn't guess the exact.
Because I did.
Yeah. You did.
I'm really impressed
The thing
with
is,
myself.
I don't want to say too much. Like, I kind of guessed that, and then I'm like, no. And then I guessed something else, and I was like, gosh.
No, I didn't guess. I guessed like when she was somewhere. When he's coming close to knowing, I was like, but no.
And he writes so well about the feeling of isolation and just complete disorientation every single day. He
Yeah,
manages to repeat the same thing over because you go through every day.
Right.
But he does it so well. Like
there's one part that really stuck out where she says, you know, this isn't a life, this is just an existence.
Yeah.
We wake up every day. And I mean, I don't know, that really struck with me. And I thought, if it were me in that position, I don't know what I would do. Like, it would be so easy to just give up.
Yeah.
Because
it's
it
so
really, like,
lonely as
nothing
well.
could matter. I mean, it matters for, it's like being a goldfish. It matters for, like, you know,
it is
a couple
like being a
hours.
goldfish, exactly.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
because every morning she doesn't remember anything.
I can just see the point where, I mean, God knows if I'd probably just sit there and eat candy bars all day. Because, you know,
might
wouldn't have
as
to go
well.
to the gym. There's nothing else
might
to
as well
do.
just get fat.
And-
You know,
and
watch a movie I like
And then
every
forget
single
about
day.
it.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how important your memories are and knowing who you are, you know, who you love.
Definitely.
Like she meets her husband every day, like fresh, and she's like, I know I'm meant to love him, but I don't. I have
But it
to.
also
She
shows-
doesn't understand
yeah.
how. She has to work out how to love him,
Yeah.
and she wishes she had the memories to understand
Right.
how she fell in love with him. She
It
doesn't
also
know.
shows how even memory, like we've all got a working memory, but how you start to kind of fill in the gaps, and that everything that you do, you're never going to be able to remember it fact for fact because
Exactly.
that's just how your mind works. And
And the
it
whole
does-
book's about an unreliable narrator, but it also kind of points out that
Yeah.
in your own, like, not to get too corny, but in
Yeah.
your own life, you're like an unreliable narrator. You
Yeah.
fill in things, you make up parts you don't remember.
Yeah.
That's so true. God, I thought this was a fantastic book. I recommend everybody to read this. I mean, it's just gripping, and the ending is just fantastic. So that was Before I Go to Sleep with S.J. Watson.